Adventures of Superman, John Ken, issue 2, Tom Taylor writing with Clayton Henry on the art. So, obviously, the setup last issue is that Ultraman is traveling through different universes and killing different Clarks. John, of course, has a history with Ultraman. Ultraman kept him trapped in that
In the
gap where he grew up, in the volcano.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a personal vendetta there, but there's also having to save his own father, because eventually he's going to come for his dad. So
Right.
there's stakes there, and there's I think this is just partly because Taylor's so good typically at doing this and using, he's done Deceased, and there's a reference to Deceased in this issue.
I do love that because he played with the timing, because John's kind of like, why me? He's like, well, you're the only John. Like, time still kind of moves fluid through the multiverse, and there was only one other John that's relatively your age, but he's busy, fighting the undead army. And I was like, oh, very, very well done there, Taylor.
Yeah. So, and that's an interesting idea that most Earths still have a young John, and this is like one of the only two that have an adult. But it does this thing where Taylor, in these different books where he's done this, and to an extent in Dark Knights of Steel, but I think in Deceased especially, using like the characters in a way and playing off on their history. And I think this is no different here, where it's using the backstory of John to fuel how personal this story is. So even though we're multiverse hopping, none of this, is about, oh, I'm in a different metropolis. Okay, there's a Perry, but it's not my Perry. Oh, there's a Lois, but it's not my Lois. Like, yeah, the Red Tornado is a Lois, but they know that.
That's not crucial, right?
Yeah.
That's not.
But not only does he know that, this Red Lois knows that, because she's involved as well. Like, we don't have to go through this dance of like, like no one really knows like who's really like who here and whatnot. So it's not doing any of that bullshit, which is nice. And then of course, the story, like you said, has stakes. So they say goodbye at the fortress. There's a nice moment where Jay is like, how do you deal with this, Lois, with him leaving all the time? And she's like, just make him promise to come back, because Superman never breaks a promise. So there was a little bonding between Lois and Jay.
I like that too, because Jay goes to her, how do you do this? And she's like, I just make myself stay busy. And then Jay, like, not buying that, goes, no, like, really though. And that's where she comes out, and it felt like this really nice connection, like you just said, between the two. Superman will never break a promise. So.
Yeah, well, it's the first time, at least in a long time anyway, where another character other than Lois is like, with a super character and has to deal with them rushing off. Obviously, we do it with all superheroes to a certain extent, but Superman does fly off to other planets and shit, so he tends to be gone on bigger sprouts. But so they don't know what Earth they're going to. They just know they're tracking Ultraman to whatever Earth he's went to next. And obviously, the big reveal of this issue is that we seem to be in the Injustice universe, because Injustice Superman is going to be making an appearance by the end of it. We'll get to that.
So I want to know how Ultraman is multiversal hopping, because I feel that Ultraman is just a piece to this, right? I feel like he's the bullet, but someone is firing it. So, there's so many options out there at this point, because for him to jump into the Injustice universe and not realize that, what's special about that Clark, it just seems almost like an oversight, so
I buy that from him though. He's just arrogant. Like,
that's true.
I don't think he's looking ahead to what universe he's going to. I think he's just hopping and didn't realize he was going to get more of a fight on this one. But it's actually really nicely set up, because Ultraman, they're flying around. Ultraman like flies through the Red Tornado and then grabs the Phantom Zone projector and sends sends
Valzod
and Red Tornado to the Phantom Zone, right? And that's cool, right? So, and then he's fighting John, and on the build up to Injustice Superman appearing, there's this like, Ultraman keeps saying to John, like, you'll never win, because like your father, you have a weakness, you have compassion, you'll always hold back, so I'm always going to win. That's actually a really nice build up to the fact that when Injustice Superman shows up, the whole gimmick of Injustice Superman is that he's the Superman who left that behind, who lost his cool and turned to be willing to kill. And sure enough, the big sort of entrance here is that Injustice Superman just appears behind Ultraman and snaps his neck, and I could not help but notice a similarity with a certain movie with a so-called Superman killing a Zod.
Right. Like, except here I feel like it's earned, right? Because this is a Superman that has seen some things. This ain't his first go-around.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean? That wasn't a complaint, Matt.
Oh, no, I know.
Like, the whole point of Injustice Superman is that I'm saying that as a critique of Man of Steel. That this Superman's willing to do this. This is the bad Superman. This is the one who's killed people. Right. This is the one who's tried to run a fascist regime.
The bad Superman. The not so... his heart might be in the right place.
Don't get me wrong. So. He's not the worst Superman.
No.
But he's a bad Superman.
Right. So, because I was shocked. Because I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get John and Injustice Superman, and, there's shades of gray and whatever. And they're going to have to team up and take on Ultraman. I know in issue 2 that Ultraman's just done. Just, snappy. He's looking behind his back without moving his neck.
Snappy.
Yeah. So
you get the big fight between Ultraman and John. John goes all electric blue, which does do some damage, but it weakens him because it takes up too much energy.
Yeah.
So Ultraman's about to kill him, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go after your Lois." Because there's a moment in the middle of the fight where he's like, "Wait, you're my John?" He's like, "I was never your John." So they realize that this is specifically the one that he held captive, and all that stuff. But we get a full page spread of Ultraman being killed, his neck being snapped by Injustice Superman. And then the ending of the issue is Injustice Superman recognizing Lois's eyes in John. You have her eyes. And so, there's two ways this could go. Is Injustice Superman going to sort of see the light again because he bonds with John, and John sort of puts him back on the right path, and so on and so on?
Or is he too far gone?
Or does he become a new nemesis because he is too far gone and he wants to keep him for himself?
So this had a couple of, holy crap moments. That, when John goes electric blue, I think that was handled really well because he's dealing with not just a physical block of having to fight Ultraman, but his PTSD of dealing with that, right? So Ultraman already has an edge, and then when the electric blue stuff hits, you get this one, and then you get the Ultraman snapping the neck, or Infinite Injustice Superman snapping Ultraman's neck. There's so much going on here, right? And then the closer, the absolute hammer, is you have her eyes, and knowing that Lois's death at his own hands, is what kicked off Injustice. It's just, man, Tom Taylor going for the dagger right to the heart.
Yeah.
So,
this all makes sense, and instantly there's story possibilities because, even if you only just broadly know the backstory of this Superman, and I do because I never played the game and I never read the comic, so I only know the broad strokes. But even just knowing the broad strokes, there's instantly potential from this story because we understand this character, we understand John's backstory, and we can sort of see the possibilities of, okay, what happens when these two different characters clash. To compare that to Batman, where we're in this new universe and everything's just sort of made from scratch, and I'm not saying you can't do good stories that way, you absolutely can, but the difference here is that everything here is instantly kind of tantalizing because it's okay, we know these characters, we know their backstories, we know how some of them bounce off of each other, and we know what impact this might have on their, on John specifically, what dealing with a version, how's he going to feel about a version of his father who's like this? Not like Ultraman, who was just super evil and that was it. It was simple. This is a Superman who was good, lost his Lois, and then turned. And so how does John deal with that?
It's a lot more complex than just Superman from an evil Earth.
Yeah, and especially again, I complimented how it was building up, him saying, "Oh, you have compassion, and therefore you always lose." Enter Injustice Superman doesn't have compassion. The other bit of foreshadowing in that fight right before he shows up is he threatens his mom. He threatens Lois. What did this Superman lose? He lost his Lois. So John may have to face this idea of a world where he could have lost his mother, and What would that do to his father? What would that do to him? Instantly, there's so many like good character drama to like gain from everything that's happened in this issue. Like I enjoy Taylor's, run as on Superman. He's John Kent Superman.
Yeah.
But I think this mini, just from 2 issues, I think is the best arc that he's done with John. Because it has real culmination and it has real stakes to everything that's going on.
Now, do we think this was just supposed to? You think this was just the next arc, and then when Williamson was brought on, they returned it to Superman, so he kind of had this planned out.
Yeah, I think this would have just been an arc in the book. Maybe the final arc, maybe not. But I think they just wanted to like do their new #1 issue Superman with the new creator. So
and that's fine because this is still of that quality. Tom Taylor hasn't lost a step.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just that thing sometimes where they want to refresh and do the new #1, but they still want the previous run to finish. So they shift it off to like a mini series or another book to finish. But that's effectively what this is, though. It's just the last 6 issues of his run. Yeah. So, no, I really like this issue. I thought everything that it built up on was good. So maybe Val Zod and Red Tornado Lois will
Red Lois
get out of the Phantom Zone by the end of the arc. Maybe not.
Yeah,
we'll
I don't know because I do like that he's like, I had to break off a neutron star lock off the my dad's security to get this, so we got to take care of it. And then it gets destroyed in the fight with Ultraman. So I'm sure there's other Phantom Zone projectors they can bring him out with, but it does make it feel like John is solo now, right? To kind of deal with this version of his dad on his own, without Val Zod telling him things or, because you would assume that they're aware of this version, right? Like they're aware of Ultraman, so because maybe we get a completely different version as told by Clark, right? That Val Zod and Red Lois wouldn't let John know. So it's got me hooked.
I don't think I followed that sentence there. I think you said Ultraman instead of Injustice Superman at one point, and it confused me.
You're fine. So what I meant is, now John's by himself, right? So he's with Injustice Superman. He doesn't have Val, doesn't have Red Lois with him, and so now he has no idea about this world. He's just going to hear this version of Superman's versions of things, and not realize how dire like this was, and I like that because it's going to give him some room for explanation because we already know how John reacts to injustices. We had 2 full stories of that so far, so I'm excited.
Yeah. No, I think this was really good. I'm not the biggest lover of Clayton Henry's art, and I do, it's not like amazing to me or anything. The big forehead syndrome kind of creeps in a little bit here or there. It's very clean and kind of digital looking at times, so I'm not in love with it, but it doesn't do anything too egregious either. So it's kind of serviceable at my end.
I think the big blockbuster moments really hit though. I think his big moments hit really well.
I guess what I would say is the layouts are good for the sequential storytelling. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the details themselves. Yeah,
that makes sense.
But no, the storytelling though is top notch. Really like what this is doing.
What did we do to deserve Tom Taylor? Right, like his Superman, his Nightwing, all the little offshoot books he's done. It's just one after another, constantly entertaining us.
Yep. No, really good stuff. Sorry, what are you giving Adventures of Superman John Kent issue 2?
I'm giving this an 8.5.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'll agree with 8.5. I'd probably give it a 9 or more, even if I like the art more.